Okay, so verse 35, kind one, to own a lot brings so much misery. There's no such grief for those with few desires. The more heads the Naga lords possess, the more their headaches, the more they have of cares. So, the previous verse was about contentment being the greatest wealth. Yeah, and here again about having few desires, being content with what we have, not being dissatisfied. Then that brings a lot of peace in the mind. Whereas if we're dissatisfied and we have a lot of possessions, we need this and we need that and the other thing and the other thing, then the more problems we have. Yeah. So if you haven't noticed, as soon as you have a computer, then you have computer hell. When you have a tablet, you have tablet hell. When you have a smartphone, you have smartphone hell. Have you noticed that the more you have, it's going to break, it's not going to do what you want it to do, and the more problems you're going to have. So it's really valuable to simplify our life as much as possible, and to look around the house. And whatever you have that you haven't used in the past year, consider to give away. Yeah, rather than just storing it for who knows how long, give it to somebody who needs it. Give it to a thrift shop. Create merit, with these things, especially the things that you don't use all the time, that are just sitting there collecting space. Yeah. I gave this assignment once to when I was teaching in Seattle, and it was very interesting what people did. Some people couldn't bring themselves to kind of go through. The assignment was just to go through one closet or one chest of drawers. Some people couldn't bring themselves to do it. Some people got the extra stuff, as far as a box, but couldn't get the box into the car. Some people got the box in the car, but couldn't get it to, Salvation Army or whatever. And one person found, when she was cleaning things out, she found something that she had totally forgotten she had. So she was completely fine with not having it. But as soon as she had it and remembered it, then she couldn't give it away. Yeah. So here it's talking about an analogy with the Nagas. The Nagas are beings who mostly live in water, and they like jewels. Yeah, so they collect a lot of jewels. But the more jewels you have, the more thieves you're going to have. And I guess the Nagas can have lots of heads. The more heads you have, the more headaches you have. Yeah? So it's like that with most things, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, 36. Now, this is very interesting. The next two verses are about how to choose the perfect spouse. So he's clearly talking to a king here, okay, and a king who's male. But so he's talking about wives and so on and so forth. He's assuming that they're heterosexual, but this actually goes for whoever you're attracted to. So if you're a woman, it could be a man. If you're gay, it could be somebody of your own sex. Whatever it is, it's whoever you are attracted to. Okay, so yeah. So we'll just say a murderer, murderess. I don't know. A murderer who sides with enemies, a king or queen who holds her or husband or wife in contempt, a thieving wife or husband who steals the smallest thing. It's these three kinds of partners you must avoid. Okay, so, if you want a good, stable relationship, you don't want to get in one with somebody who sides with your enemies and is always trying to undermine you. Okay? or somebody who holds you in contempt, who doesn't treat you very well, who doesn't respect you, but is always criticizing and berating you. That relationship's not going to go far. Or somebody who steals things, yeah, who you can't trust. And may I also add somebody who lies? Yeah. For me, lying is, even a greater thing than, let's say, stealing in terms of breaking trust. Yeah. So don't get involved with somebody like this. Again, sometimes the power of attachment, just we paint this picture of this glorious person. There's red flags all over the place. We ignore them. And there we are. Okay. A murderer. Okay, we did that one. A partner who, like a sibling, follows you, affectionate like a true and loving friend, supportive like a parent, obedient, cooperative like a good friend. Yeah, they must be honored like a family god. Okay, so, here, this clearly done in the ancient Indian gender roles. Okay, I don't think it's going to be so applicable now, having a partner who follows you and agrees with you. Yeah.
I think, it's kind of like a slave, or now it would be somebody that you're paying to do the work.
Yeah.
So that would be its own specific relationship, right?
That would what?
Be its own specific relationship, right?
Yeah, but this is, they're talking about husbands and wives here. And this is the old model of what a wife does. Okay? She's a maid. She takes care of you. Okay? So, and follows you. You're the Lord, So this kind of thing doesn't apply really to how relationships are nowadays, although each couple navigates their own way of who does what duties and who gives in to who on what issues and so on. Okay? But what you want if you're looking for partners, okay, is somebody who, when it says follows you, somebody who's faithful. Okay, somebody who's affectionate, who is a good friend, not just a romantic partner, somebody who is very supportive of you and cooperative, not obedient. We don't, nowadays obedience doesn't work too well in couple relationships, but people who can cooperate, then those people, are to be respected, and those are the people you seek your relationships from. Okay, so that's just Nagarjuna's advice. That's as much as he goes into being Dear Abbey. Okay, yeah. Although it's wise advice, yeah, isn't it? So. Then 38, take food as medicine in the right amount, without attachment, without hatefulness. Don't eat for vanity, for pride or ego's sake. Eat only for your body's sustenance. So I think this is a different translation of the verse that we say when we're offering food, Yeah, because all the components are here. Take regard your food as medicine, eat the right amount, don't eat with attachment, don't complain about the food. That one's hard. Yeah, we always like to complain. I want this, I want that. What was it that was in that bowl, that people were hammering today? The dessert is too hard. It was rather cute watching everybody trying to get dessert. We had the view of them and we're kind of giggling the whole way through. Okay. But don't eat for vanity, for pride, to make your body look good or whatever. But have the attitude of eating simply to sustain your body so you can practice. Okay? If you have that attitude deeply in your mind that I'm going to eat to sustain my body, then you want to try and eat healthy. Yeah, because you're not going to sustain your body with chips and all sorts of junk food. So he's really advising having a healthy diet, yeah, and not eating so much that we're very uncomfortable afterwards, or that it really adversely affects our health. Okay. And 39. O knowledgeable one, recite all day, and in the first and last watch of the night, then in between these two, sleep mindfully, so that your slumbers are not spent in vain. Should be spent instead of spend. So what he's saying is during the daytime, well, first of all, they usually divide the day into 6 periods. Okay, so there's 3 periods during the time when it's light, 3 periods during the time when it's dark or darkening. Okay, so the time to sleep is in the middle period, like from 10 to 2. Yeah, and then you're to, he says it first, last. Okay, so recite all day. So during the 3 periods of time during the day, you do your practice. And then in the first and last watch of the night, so between 6 and 10, which is the first part of the night, and between 2 and 6 in the morning, which is the last part of the night, then those times too, like during the daytime, do your practice. Yeah. So the recommended amount of time to sleep is 4 hours. Yeah. Now, of course, we all hear that we should sleep longer, and many of us can tell what happens when we only sleep 4 hours a day. Yeah. So the idea is basically sleep what your body needs, but not but only what is necessary. Don't oversleep, because if you oversleep, you tend to get groggy from having too much sleep, and your whole life gets consumed in sleep. Yeah. So already, if you sleep 8 hours a day, 1/3 of your whole life is just out. In terms of the time you have for practicing the path, 1/3 is gone. Then, of course, you have to eat and wash and all these other things, and you wind up with very little time to practice. So the masters all recommend, to shorten the amount of sleep as much as you can, but enough so that you still feel rested when you get up in the morning. Not so much that you undersleep and then you're grouchy and you're complaining to everybody. That's not very helpful. Okay, but don't kind of unless you're sick, sleep long hours. Yeah, because your whole life goes by that way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
About other people, but when I wake up, it's like always I need more sleep. But
Mm-hmm.
realistically, if I stay awake like an hour or two, like I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But that first waking up, I'm always gonna feel like I need more sleep.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm the same way. When I wake up, it's like I don't wake up naturally. I need an alarm. But that's okay, because I could sleep more, but it doesn't really do any good. And I function quite okay with the amount of sleep I get. And like you said, once you're up, if you have a cup of tea, then you're awake and you're ready to go. Tea.
So when I was serving a Dharma center, I know other friends have been like this. Wow, sometimes it would be like I could only literally get 4 hours of sleep and like work 7 days a week, and like I was like, oh, by the end. And I'm just wondering. I assume there's a reason, that I assume there's a beneficial reason why we're being pushed like that. But how are we to look when we're really tested because we're serving the Dharma a lot and we have to?
Um, so you're describing a situation where you're serving the Dharma and there's just a lot to do and you're pushed to do more and more and more.
Yeah, I mean, I've questioned whether I needed to, but sometimes it was really like, that's the only way I could do it. Like holding down 2 part-time jobs, serving a Dharma center, like trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah, well, we need to be balanced, don't we? Yeah. And if you can subsist with little sleep and you're healthy, that's fine. But if it's cutting into your practice time and you find you're getting grumpy and grouchy, then it's perfectly all right to say no.
Okay, I have a lot of Dharma friends in that situation, so
Yeah.
I'm just curious what your take is on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's perfectly all right. First of all, when you're planning Dharma things, plan in advance. Don't leave things to the last minute. And if things are well planned and if you divide up the work effectively, then things flow. If you're holding on to all the power, a few people holding on to all the power because I've got to arrange everything and take care of everything, and then you get yourself exhausted, that doesn't create a good feeling with everybody who's sponsoring the event. Yeah. And then also, one person can get resentful, they can get exhausted, they can get, well, I've worked so hard for the retreat, that kind of thing. So I think good planning is very important so that when a retreat happens, people can be more or less relaxed and the work can still get done. And you can ask the retreatants to come and help. Yeah, I mean, you see how things are going here. Yeah, I don't know if I should ask. Is everybody okay? Or are you all. I mean, I look, everybody's lights are out by 10, so you're getting some sleep. Uh, I don't see people here, staying up until 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think it may be harder. I mean, this could just maybe subconscious holding on. I don't know, but it might be harder in a lay center because there aren't as committed, like a huge group of committed people. So
Yeah.
usually, like 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work, and even
Yeah.
if there's a lot of asking.
Yeah, yeah. It's the whole thing of creating a group and creating a group feeling, so that everybody wants to participate and everybody feels they can contribute something. So it may be harder in a Dharma center, but if you work at that thing, and even if you give a lot of people small things, it still works out. It's not like everybody has to take big things, but you just divvy stuff up. Yeah. And I think especially if you're the person in charge, you ask for help and you say what you can do and what you can't do. Yeah. And there's some groups I've noticed where it's kind of expected that you don't sleep and you're up until 1 or 2 and you're pushing, pushing, pushing. It, if you're with a group where that's expected and that's kind of part of the buzz of having a retreat is that, everybody's running around like a chicken without their head, you can back out of that. You don't have to do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, then sleep mindfully. So it's advised before we go to sleep, try and think virtuous thoughts. Okay. Don't just like go, and collapse in bed and Oh, I'm so exhausted. Um, don't go to sleep with that kind of feeling, but, think about something virtuous, dedicate your merit, meditate on loving kindness, and, send loving kindness out to people, some kind of virtuous mind. And then in that way, because they say if you go to sleep with a virtuous mind, then a virtuous mind tends to be present while you're asleep, and you wake up that way. If you go to bed with a non-virtuous mind, that tends to be dominant when you sleep, and you wake up in a bad mood. Yeah. So it's very good. Don't watch the news right before you go to bed. Yeah. Don't read your email right before you go to bed. Just, be very selective about what you do before you go to sleep, so that when you do sleep, your mind is peaceful. Yeah. And you're not all worried about, oh, tomorrow I've got to do this and that, and oh, and and do some purification before you go to bed, so that if you got a little bit angry during the day, you can really meditate and calm yourself down and figure out, why did I get so angry, and how could I respond in the future if that situation happens again. So, do some practice. Then when you go to bed, your mind is kind of clear and you sleep better. And then when you wake up, you're fresher. And immediately when you wake up, try and think, today, as much as possible, I'm not going to harm others. Today, as much as possible, I'm going to be of benefit and service to others. And today, I'm really going to hold my bodhicitta motivation precious and continue to build on that. Okay, so you develop this as just, a regular part of your day, and it can really make a big difference. I mean, it's very obvious if you read the news right before you go to bed. Yeah, it is real obvious how you sleep. It's, yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, then verse 40. Constantly and perfectly reflect on love, compassion, empathic joy, and equanimity. And should you not attain the higher state, at least you will find bliss in Brahma's world. Okay, so this is talking about the four immeasurables, or sometimes they're called the four Brahma Viharas, the four boundless ones. The idea is that they're immeasurable because we're extending these feelings towards an immeasurable or boundless number of sentient beings, and we're developing these feelings to an immeasurable amount. Okay? So, volume 5, which is called In Praise of Great Compassion. It comes out not this August, next August. It has a huge section on the four immeasurables. And, there's many ways to practice the four immeasurables. We usually see them in our sadhana practices right after bodhicitta. But actually, as the Buddha taught them, at least in the Pali scriptures, they are objects upon which you develop serenity. And so that's why it says here, even if you should not attain the higher state, so for example, liberation or full awakening, at least you will find bliss in Brahma's world. So Brahma is one of the gods in the form realm, and people get reborn in the form realm if they've attained certain levels of dhyana, of meditative stabilization. Yeah. So it's saying even if you haven't attained liberation or awakening, at least you will have a good rebirth in Brahma's realm. However, that isn't totally, because you will have attained serenity. Yeah. And one of the dhyanas, or sometimes they're called concentrations. Yeah. So at least you'd have that. However, getting born in Brahma's realm, it's putting a Band-Aid on our dukkha because we're still in cyclic existence. When that karma runs out, then kerplunk, we go again. Okay. The four measurables are really wonderful practices. There's a way in which they teach them in the Pali tradition that I find very, very helpful in a practical kind of way. So here we're not especially thinking about them as objects to develop serenity, but the idea is our basic way of relating to people should be loving kindness. Okay, so that to practice making that kind of the baseline way in which we greet or interact any sentient being. Okay, so not with suspicion, not with what can I get out of them, not with are they going to harm me, but with just a friendly attitude. Yeah. Sometimes they translate it as friendliness, loving kindness, a pleasant attitude towards others, so that whoever we meet during the day, whether you're at work or at school or with your family, you greet them with a positive attitude. Okay? Do you know how it is? Sometimes we're in a bad mood. Everybody we greet is like, or sometimes we're very suspicious of people. So everybody we meet, we're a little bit like this. So just, try and cultivate that mind so that our habitual way of interacting with people is just with kindness and friendliness. Okay? Then, if we, or when we see people having in bad situations or suffering, either from the suffering of pain, the suffering of change, the pervasive dukkha of conditioning, whenever we see sentient beings in any of those ways, then have the response be compassion. Okay? So compassion means the wish that they are free of dukkha and the causes of dukkha. Okay? Again, compassion does not mean that, oh, you poor baby, and I'm going to fix your problems because I have compassion for you and you're incapable of managing your life. That's not compassion, that's condescendence. Okay? Or it's helicopter parenting. Yeah. So compassion is just the wish maybe not have dukkha and its causes, and I'll do what I can to alleviate any that they have. Okay? So, because sometimes we may have a pleasant attitude towards people when we meet them, but as soon as they have problems or suffering, we're out the door. I don't want to be around people who are suffering. I have enough pain and misery myself. Yeah. So we don't really care about them. We get as far away as we can, just in case they ask us to help them. And we don't want to. Yeah. Or sometimes when we see people suffer, we get afraid because it makes us realize that we could also experience that same kind of illness or bad situation. Yeah, so there's many different ways to react when we see people suffering. Sometimes when we see people suffering, we judge them. Yeah, why did you get yourself into that stupid situation? It's because you never take care. Okay, the same way sometimes in this country, how we look at people who are poor. Yeah, you must be poor because you're stupid, because everybody else can lift themselves up by their own bootstraps. And if you can't lift yourself up by your own bootstraps, something is wrong with you. So we criticize people when they are ill, when they're poor, or whatever. It's ridiculous. Yeah, because the people are not born with a level playing field. Yeah, the playing field isn't level. Yeah. So it says all people, it says all men are born equal, or created equal. So we can change that to all human beings. But, all living beings are equal in wanting happiness and not suffering. Yeah. But the playing field is not level when you start your life off, because it depends what family you're born into. Depends what you're born as. And so very often from the get-go, some people have advantages and some people have disadvantages. Yeah. So compassion doesn't judge people when they are born in situations where they face disadvantages. It has compassion for them and wants to help as much as we can. Okay? Okay, so the usual attitude, friendliness, love, wanting them to have happiness in its causes. When they experience problems, respond with compassion, wishing them to be free of those. Yeah. When they succeed and they have happiness, instead of being jealous, we practice empathic joy. Yeah. So we regard their happiness with as much joy as we would regard our own happiness. Or we celebrate their achievements as much as we would celebrate our own. Okay? So it's empathic joy because we can put put ourselves in other people's shoes. I was going to say, put our shoes in other people's selves. No, we could probably do that too, but that doesn't work well. Yeah. And so, let ourselves feel happy when good things happen to other people. We don't have to be the only one that has good situations. Yeah. And like we've talked before, jealousy is incredibly painful. So much better to celebrate others' opportunities, their virtues, their good situations, their accomplishments, yeah, and let ourselves feel happy. Mm. Okay, so that's the third one, empathic joy. Yeah. Yeah, I prefer to translate it as empathic joy because you're empathizing with the person. Sympathy in English can be, it goes more towards sometimes I feel sorry for you. Yeah. Whereas in Buddhism, that kind of feeling sorry for people, what we often consider feeling sorry for people is condescension. And the whole thing about developing any of these four immeasurables is that the person feeling it and the object that we feel it towards are equal. Okay? So when we feel compassion, it isn't that I'm superior because everything in my life is going okay, but you, who can never get your life together, always having problems, I always have to come and rescue you. I feel so sorry for you, you jerk, and I have compassion. Okay. That's not what Buddhism is talking about. Similarly, when Buddhism talks about love, it isn't, wow, you are so wonderful. You're the one person who's going to save me and always tell me I'm wonderful and meet my every need. Oh. That's not the Buddhist meaning of love. Okay? So, when you translate things, you have to use some words that are already in the language, but sometimes the common meaning of that word is not the Buddhist word, meaning of that word. Okay, so I have to be quite clear about this. When we say we want to develop love towards everybody, it doesn't mean that, it's like, I love you dearly. And we go around, hugging everybody. And, it doesn't mean that. It means, yeah, that we wish them well. We wish them to have happiness in its causes. Yeah? We see them as endearing and we wish them well. Okay? And we don't favor one person above another person. What we usually call love is there's definitely partiality, isn't there? Yeah, it's like the person you love is up here, and then of course the person you don't like is down here. So in Buddhism, when we meditate on these, it's done on the basis of equanimity, in the sense of freeing our minds from attachment to friends, aversion to enemies, and apathy towards everybody else. Okay, so in our mind we try and make the playing field level, how we feel towards people. Then when we have love, the love can be for everybody. Yeah, that doesn't mean we invite everybody into our home. Okay, so we still we may have the same feeling of wishing everybody well, but we act towards them differently according to the social relationships we're in. Okay, similarly, when we have compassion, we can have compassion equally for people, but we act differently according to what different people need, what their situation is, what our relationship with them is. Okay, so don't think that when you cultivate love, then all of a sudden you open your home to everybody indiscriminately and they all walk in. Yeah, because that is not necessarily smart, is it? Yeah. And similarly, when we feel compassion, it doesn't mean that we act in the same way towards everybody. Because one person's sick, they need one thing. Somebody else has another problem, they need something else. One person we know well, so we help them in one way. Somebody we don't know very well, we can help in another way. Okay? So that's love, compassion, empathic joy. So so far, three kinds of situations. Yeah, the regular, our normal MO towards others. Then when they're suffering, we react with compassion. When they're successful and they're happy, with empathic joy. Then equanimity. Equanimity comes in two situations. Either when people are doing very well on their own and they don't need any help, then we have equanimity. We don't meddle. Okay? So you might have been helping somebody with love, helping somebody with compassion, but once they're doing okay, you leave them alone. Yeah, you don't hover around, are you okay? And can I do this for you? And, I'm going to fix every tiny little thing that's wrong. You let them be. That's equanimity. So that's one way equanimity comes. When people are handling their lives and very well by themselves. Okay? We don't interfere. Another situation for equanimity could be when somebody is making really bad decisions and you can't get through to them. Yeah, you've tried giving them good advice or you've tried guiding them and they just tune you out for whatever reason. Maybe they're under the influence of very strong afflictions or who knows what, but you're not the person who can help them. So at that time, instead of getting frustrated, instead of getting angry, we maintain equanimity. Okay? We just realize that we can't control everybody else. People will make their own decisions and they will experience the results of their own actions. And we can see maybe that somebody's making unwise decisions or going down the slippery slope, but they won't listen. We don't have any entryway with them. So rather than getting angry, rather than getting frustrated, we just remain equanimous. And we keep the door open in case later, sometime, their mind changes and there's the opportunity to give them some good advice. Okay? Because if, we've all been in the situations where we've tried to help somebody who doesn't want our help. Have you been in that situation? It is frustrating, isn't it? Because you can look and it's like, what you're doing is not going to be good for you and it's not going to be good for others, and you need to do something different. And you try and help, and they don't want to have anything to do with you. Okay? And then you get frustrated because you know they're going to go and create a mess, and then they're going to come back to you after they've created a mess and ask for help. Yeah. And you're like, oh, I can't stand that. Yeah. And, so what you have to do in those situations, rather than getting frustrated, and just throwing the person out and say, I don't want to have anything to do with you. You step back, you keep an equal mind. Yeah. You may have to witness them creating horrible karma, and you can't do anything about it. And that's really painful sometimes. It's really difficult to watch people make big mistakes in their life. But we have to learn how to keep our mind equanimous at that time. Yeah. And we just step back, we mind our own business. And then later, if their mind changes, if there's the opportunity to help, we help. But again, we don't help as, I'm going to save you, and you didn't listen to me when I gave you all that good advice before, and you got yourself in a mess, and now I'm going to come rescue you again. And now you better appreciate what I do for you. Okay. So we don't go on that trip. So this requires some work on our part, doesn't it? Because especially when we're close to somebody or very attached to somebody, to watch them make bad decisions is extremely difficult. Yeah, but sometimes what can we do? Yeah, you can't shackle somebody. Yeah, you just have to let go, and that's it. Okay, but stay calm, keep the door open. But again, if they come back to your open door, you don't fall all over yourself and play the rescuer. Yeah? Because that just, if you keep playing the rescuer, then the people never grow up. Okay? Let me tell a story first, okay? So one person told me once, when he was a teenager, he kept acting out. He would get into drugs, and he would do this and he would do that. And he would get picked up by the cops and taken to juvie. And then, mom would come and take him out of juvie and pay whatever fine there was, or talk to the judge and, convince the judge so that she could take her kid home. And this went on and on and on, and the kid just kept, the guy who told me this, he said, I just kept on doing what I was doing and, misbehaving and getting into trouble. And one time, there it was again, same situation. They were in juvie court, and, where his mom usually said, okay, release him into my care and I'll pay whatever was necessary. But mom said, Judge, you keep him. I've tried to help this kid. He won't listen to me. He's out of control. You keep him. And the guy told me that he was so shocked. Because mom finally said, yeah, you're not cooperating. What can I do? And he said it was at that time that that's what made him look at his own behavior and realize that he needed to change. Yeah, because, and I can assume, for mom, it was very painful leaving her kid in juvie. No mother likes that. But she was at her wit's end, and she also knew that bailing him out one more time wasn't going to help. But it worked well, because he did start to change after that.
Your story kind of answered my question, because I get that we don't want to rescue them, but on the other hand, we don't want to shame them. We need to walk that middle line, and I just wanted you to say more about the middle line. I think your story talks a little bit about that.
Sometimes rescuing them is shaming them. Because when we rescue them, we're saying, you are incompetent. Aren't we? Yeah, you are incompetent. You can't manage your life. So I'm going to come help you. And that is really shaming the other person. So sometimes just saying, you are a responsible adult. You made your own decisions. You will experience the result of what you're doing. Okay. And like I said, it can be very painful because we may care a lot. Yeah. Sometimes even organizations we may look at, and we care a lot about an organization and they're doing great work, but then we see that maybe the board of directors isn't making such wise decisions, and nobody listens to us. Yeah, so again, we step back, we make prayers for them, and we have to just remain equanimous. Okay, so this takes, I think, a lot of fortitude. When we talk about the third perfection, sometimes we translate it as patience. I like translating it as fortitude, because in those situations, where you want to help but you're powerless, it takes a lot of internal strength to just stay steady, stay calm, stay open, know what you can do and know what you can't do, and not let yourself be manipulated. So it can be quite hard.
Yeah, I found walking that balance is hard. Like one of my friends, for instance, her brother-in-law committed suicide, and it was like they were taking care of him, and they were, but then it's like she has this guilt. It's like, did we give him too much space? Or then you see people when you're trying to help them, but then if you try to let go, sometimes they just fall like gravely flat.
Yeah.
And it's just like, when do you find the right balance?
The whole thing, one of the things that makes suicide difficult for the people who survive a loved one's suicide is that you feel like you should have been able to stop it. Isn't that? You care so much for the person that if, you rack your brains, what could I have done differently? Maybe if I had done this, maybe if I could have saved them, things would have turned out differently. It's my fault, and survivors tend to blame themselves. Actually, we need to understand when somebody commits suicide, that is their decision. Yeah? It's a bad decision. It's a selfish decision. Isn't it? Killing yourself, I think, is incredibly selfish. So you don't care about all the people who care about you and what they're going to go through. You're just trying to solve your own pain. And it's also quite a tragedy, when somebody kills themselves and thinks that that's going to end their own pain, because it's not. Yeah. But I think the big thing is to recognize that is that person's choice. And for sure, beforehand, usually lots of people try to help. Yeah. And the help didn't work. So blaming yourself and feeling like I should have been able to stop that person from killing themselves. You know, who said we should be able to stop that person? Can we control anybody else? Yeah, we can't control anybody else. The only one we could have any attempt at controlling is maybe ourselves. But, you know, yeah, maybe you walk in just as that person is picking up the gun and you see what's going on and you know, take them to mental health. Yeah, maybe that happens, but sometimes they don't even want to go then. Yeah, and they'll shoot themselves before you can even do that. So it's like thinking that we're giving ourselves responsibility that we don't have when we think we should have been able to prevent somebody from killing themselves. Yeah. And we just have to accept, you know, this was their decision. It was a tragedy. Yeah. It was poor decision, but there's not much we can do. You know, when it's over, what can you do? Make prayers for them. Read the King of Prayers. Dedicate for their good future life. But just sitting around and going round and round, oh, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? How about this? How about that? I should have been able to stop it. I'm guilty. They all did it because of me. That is not helpful. And it's also not very realistic. So I think, you know, I think we need to learn how to grieve in a healthy way. Yeah? And we often don't know how to grieve in a really healthy way that will help us bring peace to our mind. Yeah, I've talked to so many people who have relatives who, oh my goodness, you know, just really difficult in the family. And they care so much, they want to help, and they can't. Yeah? So that's why equanimity, in the case where people aren't open, when they're suffering, you know, they're making unwise decisions, but they aren't open. And equanimity when they're doing very well all by themselves. Okay? So I think that way of explaining the four immeasurables is quite nice. Yeah? Just as a blueprint and as a way to practice and to check up in our own lives. You know, how am I responding to people? Yeah? When I go into work in the morning, am I going in with a mind of loving kindness? Or am I going in angry because, you know, my toaster broke? Or whatever. Yeah. And so how can I get my mind to be in a good state so that when I greet people, it's in a friendly way, and so things start out well. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then 41. The four dhyanas. So the dhyanas, we're in the desire realm, right? So then the form realm, there's four dhyanas. Yeah, the Pali term is jhanas. They're levels of mental meditative stability. Yeah, but you still have some kind of form, but it's a much more ethereal form or body than we have. And then there's the four formless absorptions, where they don't have a gross body at all. And those beings, their concentration is so deep in the formless realm that they basically just have awareness when they're born. Then they go into their deep samadhi. They stay there for a really long time, as long as the karma lasts. And then at the end, they kind of come out of their samadhi again. And that can be quite painful because that karma has been used up. So then they fall to a lower dimension. So here, talking about the 4 dhyanas, those are in the form realm. The Brahma realm is in there. Okay, so the 4 dhyanas, which in turn discard the pursuit of pleasure, joy, bliss, and pain, will lead to fortune equal to the gods in Brahma, light, great virtue, or great fruit. Okay, so these 4 dhyanas, as you go through of them to attain the first one, you temporarily suppress feelings of pleasure and attachment to pleasurable objects of the desire realm. Yeah. In the second one, then you give up a kind of joy or rapture. Let me think. Yeah, first one, the second one. First one. No, in the first one, you've given up attachment to sense pleasure. The second one, you still have that kind of rapturous, joyous feeling, but it's a little bit too giddy. So that also has to be given up. And then in the third one, if I'm remembering correctly, the third one, then there's still the feeling of bliss, but you give that up. And then in the fourth one, there's a state of equanimity. Yeah. And so here they say there you become equanimous to either pleasure or pain. So that's what the second line means. So that attaining those, 4 dhyana states will lead you to fortune equal to the gods in Brahma, light, great virtue, or great fruit. So those are specific realms within the form realm. Okay, so what it's saying is you can develop these deep meditative states, the ones specifically in the form realm, yeah, that will lead you to deeper and deeper states of internal peace, yeah, that will lead you to these states of meditative absorption. So that's good. It beats suffering in the desire realm. But again, it's not an end to itself, because unless you generate wisdom, if you don't use those states of meditative absorption to generate wisdom, then when the karma to be born there ends, you're back down in the desire realm. But if you can use those states of deep concentration to penetrate wisdom, penetrate with wisdom into the nature of reality, and then unify your stabilizing meditation of serenity and your analytic meditation of insight, to unify those, then you can really get somewhere on the path and start, developing that more and more, and then begin to eliminate the different levels of afflictions. Okay, 42. Great good and evil deeds are of 5 kinds, determined by their consistency, their zeal, their lack of counter force or counter agent, their perfect fields. So strive in this respect to practice good. Okay, so he's going from these incredible blissful states and peaceful states now to talking about karma. Okay, so when we look at the verse, yeah, it says 5 kinds, but there's only 4. Consistency, zeal, lack of counteragent, and perfect fields. But the footnote explains that when we talk about perfect fields, there's 2 kinds. Yeah, holy beings and sentient beings. So let me go back. These are factors that make a karma weighty or heavy. Okay, so the first thing is any action, be it virtuous or non-virtuous, that you do continuously or you do many times, repeatedly. Yeah, that makes the force of the karma heavier. Okay? So even telling little white lies, although they're little, if we tell them a lot, by the force of the constancy, the repetition, that karma becomes heavier. In the same way that doing even small virtuous actions, like in the morning, first thing, setting up your altar, offering your food before meals, yeah, these are not necessarily big virtuous actions, but we eat a lot of times during the day. Yeah, so we can have a lot of repetition with that. And we set up our altars every morning, making offerings. So the fact of the repetition can make that karma much heavier. Okay, so that's one factor. The second factor, zeal, refers to the your motivation, your intention. Are you doing this action with great enthusiasm, or are you doing it reluctantly? So, do you have a strong virtuous motivation, or are you kind of dragging yourself to do it? Yeah. Do you have a strong non-virtuous motivation? I am really gonna get even at that guy with that guy, or is it a weak one? Okay, so the zeal, the enthusiasm, the intensity of the motivation is the second factor. The third that makes let me go through all these. When the third that makes a karma heavy is whether we apply an antidote to it or not. Okay, so in terms of our non-virtue, if we do the four opponent powers, that will reduce the strength of the karma, and so then when it ripens, either it will ripen for a shorter time and a lesser suffering, something like that. In terms of our virtuous karma, yeah, if we destroy it by generating wrong views or anger, then it can impede the ripening of our virtuous karma. So it becomes a smaller, pleasant experience or one that lasts a shorter time or something like that. Okay? And then the perfect field. So this is the one that has two. So the two fields, depending on who we act towards, that influences the heaviness of the karma. Okay, so acting either virtuously or not virtuously towards our spiritual mentors, towards the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, towards our parents, yeah, then that creates karma that's heavier. And then the second field, so those are that's the field of benefit, those who have benefited us. And then the second field is the field of need. So, the poor, the sick, the disenfranchised. So the actions that we do, either virtuous or non-virtuous towards them, become heavier. Okay, so this is giving us a little, some criteria for how to evaluate our own actions. So it's not just figuring out when we've done any of the 10 non-virtues, but really seeing which ones are weightier and will bring us stronger result, whether we're doing the 10 virtues or the 10 non-virtues, and similarly like that, which are stronger, which are weaker.
Okay. My question was about zeal. So, for instance, if you commit a virtuous action and you're feeling reluctant, like you said, or apprehensive or something like that, but maybe you're really attached to doing something that's non-virtuous, but you replace it with a virtuous action that you're maybe just kind of like about. Does that have any effect on the karma?
Okay, so you're saying in a situation where there's some strong attachment and you create a negativity, but then later you do a virtuous action that with kind of half a motivation,
Right,
Like
right.
that?
For instance, that woman you shared with us, like she didn't want to give away whatever that object was, but say she did it anyway, even though she had this strong attachment to it. Is kind of
okay.
what I'm thinking.
Okay, so that kind of thing, you're going to have a non-virtuous karma, from, let's say, miserliness, not wanting to give. But then, if that person eventually overcomes that, yeah, then they're able to create virtue. If they're, it's hard to say. Somebody who overcomes their miserliness, do they must have had to do some work. So it may seem that their generosity is not that great, but on the other hand, they had to do some work to change their mind, didn't they? Yeah. So there's lots of situations like this. We could do something, non-virtuous. We could, give somebody a piece of our mind. Yeah. Uh, and then later realize, gee, this is a relationship I value. I wish I hadn't said that. So we go back when we apologize, and then we really make an effort to change our ways. Yeah. So that's applying an antidote, and that will make the impede the ripening of the negative karma. Okay. Oh. So we'll do just 2 questions, then write your other questions down because we're almost at 6 o'clock here. Yeah.
So, when you go to Tibet and you drink the water of Lake Manasovar, it clears all your karma. When you
Do you really think that?
well, I don't know, but I did. And I mean, there's all kinds of things that you do there that they say. I circumambulated Mount Kailash during the year of the horse. That's good for 13 years of karma or something, And so
Yeah.
I just want you to comment on that.
Yeah. His Holiness basically says that's propaganda. It's stuff done to encourage people to do virtue. Yeah, I don't think that those are things that we can take literally, because you can circumambulate Mount Kailash, and with an angry mind. You can circumambulate Mount Kailash thinking that the mountain is the Buddha, and you're circumambulating, and you're paying homage to the Buddha. You can circumambulate the mountain because you're a hiker. There's so many other factors. So those kinds of things that they say, it's more to encourage somebody to do something virtuous. I don't take them literally. Yeah. Well, see, that's why people say them, because they encourage people to do something virtuous. So if you like taking them literally, and it helps you in your mind to create virtue, go right ahead. I'm not trying to talk you out of it. Okay?
This has to do with the conversation I had with one of the monastics about, maybe it goes under zeal, but if your mind is a very focused mind, or not scattered, and you do something non-virtuous,
Right.
is it
Yeah.
more powerful?
What do
then
you
as well?
think?
I would think yes.
Yes, it is. So zeal sometimes can also refer to how you did the action. Okay, whether you did it with a lot of energy, or whether you just kind of, yeah. But clearly things where you're more focused, you're paying more attention, your motivation, your heart's into it, then those actions are going to be much stronger. Okay, so we'll stop here for today.